Got room for one more if you still want to go to Aspen.
Where did you find that?
Some kid back in town traded the van for it, straight up.
We'll take the car and drive all night.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to From the Frame Up, the automotive podcast that weaves through traffic to give you the most important topics in the automotive industry. My name is Jared Jones. I am your host. Full disclosure, From the Frame Up is the blog property of CSN Collision Centers. CSN Collision Centers is a network of more than 200 stores providing collision paint and glass repair across the country. You can find CSN Collision Centers at csncollision.com. Okay, housekeeping out of the way. I am very excited today. It is episode 2 of From the Frame Up. We are into now the year 2021, new big things. And so to kick us off, I'm very happy to have with us from Autohouse Technologies, the manager of client development, Rebecca Fyfe.
Hi, Jared.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I wanted to give the people just a brief introduction of who you are and what you do. So Rebecca is responsible for key account development with Autohouse Technologies. Autohouse Technologies is the leading provider of business intelligence software to the North American collision repair industry. Through its software platform, Generis, Autohouse helps world-class repairers to assess, plan, and implement opportunities that increase their overall performance and profitability. And Rebecca today is going to talk to us about empowering our data. But before we get into that, I wanted to pass the mic to you, Rebecca. Tell the people who you are and what you do.
Well, Jared, I work with shops to unlock the power of their data. So I help them analyze what their data from their body shop management is telling them, and how to identify areas for improvement. Always to be looking forward to increase their efficiency and profitability.
I love that. I think that you hit on the most important thing at the end there, especially for collision repair owners, is profitability, right? So I think that that's a really good segue into kind of what we're going to talk about today. Is a lot of the data at our fingertips is kind of sales oriented, right? So if you're a body shop owner, you own an automotive repair business or anything kind of within the automotive industry, you're looking at data and you're looking most of the time at kind of sales data. But we know that there's more to it than that. So we know that the power of data and kind of using it to its full potential can tell you more about more than just profit and loss. It kind of gives you the ability to drive your business in the direction that you want it to go. And you can be more proactive in terms of your business approach and your strategy instead of just being reactive. So kind of setting the table, and with all of that said, I think the logical place to start is, here we are in 2021 and still COVID, right? I mean, it just seems like it's not going away. We're finding ways to deal with it, and we're doing our best to kind of leverage the resources that we have to overcome some of that as repairs. But with driving traffic down and all those things that go with it, customer service being at the forefront, what has the pandemic done to change the way that you support your clients and how they view sales data specifically?
Well, to be honest, it hasn't had a huge impact on the way we interact with our customers. I think if anything, they've probably spent a little bit more time being engaged in their business. Now that the shops aren't as busy, they're kind of looking for other ways to increase their efficiency and their profitability, especially in times like this. So I think we've seen a bit of increased engagement, especially during the lockdown time. People just reaching out, wanting to get a better understanding of what their data is telling them and what areas they can focus on to see those improvements.
So collision repairs for a long time, we've just kind of, been focused on keeping the business moving forward and not necessarily dove into kind of that deep level analytic discussion, understanding the trends of their business with the ability to plan 6, 9, or 12 months ahead. The pandemic hits, and now we're paying a little bit more attention to some of the things that perhaps we had taken for granted. So for the businesses that are, that are regularly tapped in, which are, fairly standard, there's a lot of guys and girls out there that are really tapped into their business. What are they focusing on that allows them to have a really good understanding of their own data and allow that to kind of maneuver the business forward?
Well, shops that are really paying attention to their data, they have that ability to forecast, as you said, days, weeks, months into the future. So they could tell, a lot sooner than some of the other shops that aren't on top of their data when they were going to start to run out of work. They can predict some issues before they occur. Obviously, in terms of COVID, it's kind of a more of a minimizing the impact that it has. So they can kind of get ahead of it and try to bring in more sources of work, whether that's trying to round up more customer pay or fleet work, or even getting down to it, unfortunately, maybe that's making some tough decisions on staffing and letting some of the staff go.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's kind of inevitable, right? And it's not just specific to the collision repair industry. And you're looking at industries across the board in every different segment. There's unfortunately been layoffs. There's a lack of work, everywhere. Government subsidies and all those kinds of programs are at play for a reason. And so I do think, in part, we've been fortunate in that it's been deemed an essential service. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's that much volume, right? So that's obviously taken pretty significant hit. So if I were to put it simply, when you're looking at the clients that you work with specifically, and they're just kind of getting started out, you give them the one or two rules that they need to leverage. What's on page 1 of the Autohouse handbook, right? Like, what do you give them and say, if you're going to do nothing else, 1, 2, and 3, or just 1?
Well, to be honest, Jared, I wouldn't say there is one specific thing. We deal with a variety of shops, so their needs and where they're starting from might be a little bit different. So the way we approach it is we'll do an initial assessment of the data with the shop and identify some areas that they could focus on to see some improvement. But one of the biggest issues that we notice, and probably the number one issue across the board, is compliance with their management system. So, I think a lot of the shops out there, probably most, aren't using their management system to their full capability. So that is there to help them run their shop. And unfortunately, if the data in their management system doesn't reflect what's happening on the shop floor, then obviously the reports aren't going to provide any value or as much value as they could. So it is really important to have that admin compliance with their management system. And we have some targeted reports that help point out areas that they can focus on.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's such a good point to bring up. I think that the body shop management system is kind of like the unsung thing that happens within the collision repair business. So obviously, I come from the automotive side on the OEM side of the business. And I think we look at the dealer focus, and yeah, of course, everybody has a dealer management system, and it helps them plan business accordingly, helps them connect with their customer in terms of creating customer profiles and that kind of thing. But when I first started working in collision specifically, it was kind of eye-opening to see, like, wow, like, we do this at the body shop level as well, right? So that collision repairs are also focusing on the same kind of stuff. There's important KPIs that are shared within the team itself that help them kind of move their business forward. So with that said, we kind of touched on, I just mentioned KPIs a little bit. What would be like the most common mistake that people make when they start working with Autohouse, or what's the most common misconception that they have about what you guys are able to do, or what perhaps they need to keep their finger on the pulse of in order to get the most out of the relationship with Autohouse?
I think to start is everyone's kind of looking for the easy button. We connect with people and we show them the tools that we have and they think it's great. But if they don't actually take that and use that information to drive change, then they're not really providing a lot of value. So I think unless people are really ready to put the work in, then the reports aren't going to help them very much. And the other thing is sometimes people get maybe too excited. So we'll do an analysis of their data and they're so keen to start making changes. But if they bite off more than they can chew, it's just not likely to help them. So, if you're trying to make 20 changes in the shop, you'll be lucky if you even make one of them. So I think focusing on small changes to start, focusing on 1 or 2 things instead of 5 or 10, you're more likely to get the results that you want.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I think the term low hanging fruit comes to mind when we talk about making those kind of easy changes first, right? Not trying to boil the whole ocean. So if we were to say, like, these are the KPIs we should focus on, or these are the metrics we should focus on, what's the starting point? Like, what's the holy grail of this is the first place that you're going to start, and once you understand this, then we'll move to level 2.
I'm actually going to kind of work backwards. So one of the key KPIs that we focus on is touch time. It's just a great kind of central KPI to have the whole team focus on. It really can help uncover some other inefficiencies within the shop. So we like to work backward from there. So typically, again, going back to input into the management system, date compliance, making sure you're scheduling your vehicles in and out. So again, every customer is a little bit different, and where we see the shortcomings may vary from store to store. So we'll work with them to kind of create a targeted plan. Okay, I think, marking vehicles arrived when they come on site. That's something that we're not doing. So we don't have an accurate picture of WIP within our management system.
That's an excellent point, and I love the acronyms and the terms that are getting thrown around. So I am gonna backtrack on you a little bit. Cycle time, touch time. What is touch time for those of the audience? Not sure there's going to be too many yet. We're just getting started, but those of the audience that don't have a familiarity with collision repair, what is touch time and why is that important?
So touch time is the average number of hours produced per day for an RO. So we calculate that. The total number of hours of that RO divided by the cycle time, and that'll be keys to keys. So you have a vehicle comes in on Monday and goes out on Friday, and it's a 15-hour job. Your touch time will be 3 hours per day. Weekends are included in that average, so that can push it down a little bit, but that's how we calculate touch time.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes total sense. Just want to make sure we're all starting at the same point, even though I think you originally schooled me on a lot of this stuff back in a previous life, when I was with a different automaker and we had just launched a collision repair program, and we were talking about some of the metrics we wanted to look at. And I'm kind of like blown away by all of these different machinations of metrics that I didn't really think were being viewed at the collision repair level. So your expertise in the field is well known, especially by me. So that's part of the reason why you're here. I do want to talk to you a little bit about what you do with clients specifically. So like if you're talking about, a client, say a few years ago, like me, I'm starting at the absolute ground level. Like I don't have a firm understanding of what I need to be looking at. I understand the business and I kind of understand at an overview, kind of height, what I should be focusing on, but where should I go or where should I look in terms of best practices, and how do you teach those clients that are kind of starting at that ground level how to use the data effectively? Like what's the easiest teaching tool or the first kind of best practice lesson that you give to novices like me?
It's a tough question. It varies a little bit from role to role. So if I'm talking to the owner of a shop versus the CSR, my trainings would be a little bit different in both of those cases. So, with the CSR, again, going back to that date compliance, making sure that they're marking their dates, they're scheduling their vehicles in, they're scheduling their vehicles for delivery, things like that, so that they can get a true picture of what their average output is per day. What is their optimal WIP level, things like that really go into those KPIs and again, contribute to their efficiency and their profitability.
I love it. I think the idea of kind of contributing to efficiency is kind of the underlying perhaps unsung hero of the whole thing, right? Like we're really looking at bottom line a lot. I think when you look at efficiency, that just gives you more time as a resource to be able to focus on other things that then ultimately help you become more efficient and then help you drive profitability. So it's a really good point by you. I wanted to ask if you could clarify WIP for us, because I think I know what it is, but I know the acronym, but like when you're talking about it, like when you guys say WIP, what do you mean by that term?
So WIP stands for work in progress, and we calculate WIP as everything that's on site. I know that there are some differing kind of thoughts around that, but anything that's arrived but has not been completed, delivered, or closed, we consider WIP. And kind of just going back to your other point there, I keep going back to the efficiency and profitability, but we've actually done a lot of studies comparing shops with a higher touch time and shops to a lower touch time. And actually the shops with a higher touch time also have a higher gross profit. So, not to say that's a direct cause, but definitely shops that are more efficient and can get vehicles out the door faster are more efficient across the board. So again, just really getting the team focused on that one central goal. We've seen shops have a big improvement.
That's excellent. It's another really good point. I think the team-centric approach is obviously incredibly important when you're working in a shop environment, right? So you've got obviously the front office staff, the production floor, the CSRs and the actual technicians have to work together towards the common goal. So I think that's a really good place for us to kind of move to next. You talked about working with different people at different levels. So depending on, who you're working with might, change what your approach is with them. So if you're working with an owner who's like, they're knee deep in the information. They've got access to the metrics. They know what's at their fingertips. They're trying to leverage it the right way. They've got a good understanding of what the terms are and how to use it. What's the best way for them to get the most out of their approach to the analytics side of the business with their team, right? Not just me as the subject matter expert. I've got 10 or 15 people reporting to me who don't necessarily have the ability to dive into that data the same way that I do. How do I, as an owner, get the most out of my team, with all that information at hand?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole team should be engaged with reporting. It's usually the owners and the managers that are usually looking at those reports, but I think it should be pushed down to everyone. Although not every person needs every piece of information, because then it's information overload. And if they're receiving 10 reports in their inbox every morning, they're not going to look at them. So we have some role-specific reports that can be sent out as push reports. And we also have some visual display dashboards. So those can be put up in the front office or on big screens in the back of the shop. And they're really meant to align the whole team towards some common goals. So they're intended to change the behavior. So if you set goals with your team and they know exactly where they are, maybe there's a little incentive for them. We've seen some shops implement a bonus for the team, or even sometimes it's just a pizza lunch on Fridays if they achieve that certain target. So again, aligning the whole team and making that part of your culture. If you send out some reports and tell them to look at it, but don't ever follow up or kind of hold them accountable, they probably won't look at them. So I've seen some really good success with people that really drive it through to the team and show them how important it is and why it's important. I think sometimes, using a CSR with date compliance, for example, they're not entering the dates because they're trying to mess things up. They just don't know that it's important and why it's important. So really getting them engaged on that helps.
Yeah, for sure. I think you just touched on such an important aspect of kind of the team approach is that, nobody's going into their workday and saying, well, how can I mess things up for Rebecca today? Or how am I going to make Jared's life more difficult? Although I think in my past, there's probably a few people that would think that before they punch in. But, having an understanding of what your specific role or task does to the overall goal of the team is so important. That's why I think what you talked about in terms of the information sharing, sharing those metrics and the value of the importance of what those individual team members are doing to the overall approach of the team for that given day or that given week, how everybody's different piece of the puzzle fits towards putting that whole puzzle together as a target is such an important aspect of the entire team approach. So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. I want to do a bit of a compare and contrast, like business owners who are doing all the good things. They're doing everything right. They're invested in the data. They understand the importance of it. They've cascaded that information to their team effectively. They're setting aggressive targets. They're bonusing or incentivizing their employees for hitting them. And then owners that don't do any of that. What's the biggest fallout in a negative perspective for the owners that weren't necessarily at that high level before COVID hit versus the ones that were kind of prepared for it because they had a pulse on all of that important information and those important best practices before the pandemic hit?
I don't think anyone was really prepared, but I mean, again, going back to seeing out weeks and months into what's coming up, the shops that don't keep tabs on their numbers, they don't have any predictability into the future. So they aren't going to be able to pre-plan or make adjustments. They're not going to see those issues until they're already happening. Whereas the people that are really proactively monitoring their numbers and their KPIs, they have the ability to influence those results. And identify, maybe an insurance partner that you're not performing well for, to adjust that and adapt to maybe try and save that business. if you don't know what's happening, then it's gone before you have that opportunity to fix that.
For sure. I completely agree with you. It's such an important thing to focus on, and you really think about the idea of it already having happened, right? So when you're looking at those numbers, right in front of your face, it's that you're looking at things that have already taken place. When you're forward looking, when you're looking at forecasting or trends, like you said, now you can influence some of that. That can be behavior based. There are things that you can implement that can change what you're looking at in terms of what might happen 3 months from now or 30 days from now. When you're looking at historical data and you're trying to say, oh, well, what could I have done here? It's kind of too late. So taking a proactive approach and being having a thorough understanding of your own numbers is such an important point and such an important factor, especially for collision repairs in today's landscape. So you've been excellent so far, but obviously there's a negative side to data, right? There can be a negative side to data. It's not always a pretty picture. So what's the most common problem that you get with data in terms of that relationship that it has with the bottom line of your clients' businesses, and how do you help them kind of diagnose those issues?
We walk through an operational snapshot with the stores. So we're looking more, we do have historical reporting, which is always great to set that bench line and see what the past performance has been. But again, we always look at the operational, what's in process, and kind of help them make a plan to improve, whether it's cleaning up some admin processes or trying to adhere to some SOPs. So we'll kind of make a plan with them, and again, focus on one or two small things first, and then build upon those once those become second nature.
I like that. The last thing that you said there was, once those become second nature. It's like, okay, it's not enough that you understand it. Like, I get that you understand what I'm saying. Once you prove and once you show that you've built that into a process and it's become second nature, it's deeply rooted now in your business. Now is the right time to transition to the next thing. And I think that's another valuable point by you. You're on fire. I'm gonna put you to the test though. So despite the fact that I was at one point previously an analyst, which is a scary thought. In high school, I hated numbers, right? I hate algebra. I like writing. I like talking. That's been helpful and hurtful to my professional career, but that's another conversation. So the prospect of like doing like complex math, it like freaks me out. Like fast zombies freak me out, and math problems freak me out. So for people like me who are like really averse to numbers and really averse to like, complex analytical queries and things like that, how do you get your clients to understand that it's not an algebra test, right? You're not going into this and you're going to need a scientific calculator. It's more simple than that. How do you get them to overcome the fear of the complex numbers and get them to understand that it's a little bit more straightforward than that?
Mm-hmm. I understand that customers have a varying degrees of comfort level with looking at reports and numbers. So I really do try not to overwhelm them. Just picking one or two small things to look at, not sending too many reports, but just really specialized, specific reports that give them the minimum amount of data that they need to see. And when we're talking about influencing change, what's the smallest change that we can make here that's going to have the biggest impact? And we'll do follow-up. So, I like to do breakout my training. So we'll do initial kind of walkthrough to just to wet their feet, and then have follow-up touch points to kind of keep analyzing and reviewing how our plan is working, and then maybe make a new plan, or let's move on to the next thing. This is working. So we really try to hold their hand as much as possible. But I kind of look at it in terms of fitness too. Like, sometimes people get all excited and they want to, go from a sedentary lifestyle where they're eating junk food all day and they want to go full bore into working out. It never is going to work because they get completely overwhelmed. It's too much to eat healthy and exercise and drink water and do this. So again, same thing with reporting. Let's just take, one small thing, small incremental changes over time to get toward that goal.
That's such a great analogy. And I think that we're going to have to follow up offline about some of the things that I need to change. But I think you triggered me there. But no, that's such an interesting analogy in terms of understanding just what it is that you need to do so that you can actually get this win, right? Because if you try to do all of it, there's just no way. You just need to work in steps, work in sprints in order to get to that end goal. I love that analogy. Probably going to steal it. So I'm gonna steal it right now. Actually, I'm gonna try and implement it on the fly. So we're kind of coming up on the final lap. I want to make sure I get this question in, but I want to set the table the right way. So you've got a potential prospect, right? I know that it's we're all sales driven, and so we always want to make sure that we're providing for our families and for our organizations. But you do need to evaluate whether or not somebody actually needs your help, right? So I assume that there's always going to be collision repairers out there who can use some help in terms of what Autohouse Technologies and what you, Rebecca, do. But if you're to ask them a question, like a qualifier, how is it that you determine either this shop, they're doing okay, they just need this, or this shop's so good there's really nothing that I can do to help them, or they're going to fail the course if I don't jump in here. How do you, as the fitness instructor, kind of put them through that first deep test or squat test or bench test? What is it that you use as a qualifier to determine where you're going to be most effective to help that potential prospect and turn them into a client?
Well, I think everyone can use reporting, whether you're the top performer in the industry or whether you're someone that's kind of struggling to get by. I think looking at admin processes are first thing. If people aren't doing the admin processes, that's where we start. Then if they've got those locked in, we look at things like WIP. I'd ask someone, what's your optimal WIP? If they can't tell me that, that's an indication that they could maybe use some coaching. Same thing with their touch time. If they're not performing at a touch time of 3 hours per day, what can we do differently to increase that number and improve your efficiency? I would say the WIP, touch time, and kind of admin processes would be the three things.
Excellent. Very good answers. I think that's an important thing to consider, because what we're hoping is that, the many viewers that we're going to get that see this, that aren't currently clients of Autohouse Technology will stop and say, I don't think that I can answer either or any of those questions. So maybe we need to give Autohouse Technologies a call because they can help us out. So you have been a great sport. I really appreciate your insight, but we're not done with you yet. We're gonna pivot into a segment we call Fast Five. So you're nervous. We chatted about it briefly, but we're going to put you to the test. So you work in automotive. You've come on this automotive podcast. It's very unique, and so we're going to give you 5 car-related questions. You're the first guest to play this, so this is a bit of a trial run. We don't know.
I'm not a car person, right?
Yes, you work in automotive. Okay, I get it, man. You're a data person, but we're going to put you to the test anyway. So we call it Fast Five. The reason we call it Fast Five because from the frame up, we love the Fast and the Furious movie franchise because it's the first movie franchise to have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, whose fan account I manage, and it's the last movie in the franchise to have an almost realistic plot. Even though dragging a bank vault through the streets of Brazil is totally unrealistic, let alone with 2 Dodge Chargers, it's probably physically impossible. But Fast Five is my favorite movie of the 9 movies that they've made. Yes, they've made 9. And so we've called this segment Fast Five. So it's 5 questions about cars. We're going to time you. So you have to answer them as fast as you can. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. Start the clock. What was the first car you learned to drive in?
1986 Dodge Colt.
Your favorite car from a TV show or a movie?
The DeLorean from Back to the Future.
The nickname of the car that you're driving right now?
I don't have one for my car now, but I used to drive an orange car that we called the Pumpkin.
Favorite food to eat in the car?
I'd never eat in my car, but I love to have a black coffee.
Favorite song to listen to on a road trip?
Ooh, probably have to be my kid's favorite song, Ed Sheeran, "Castle on the Hill."
Time. Very good. That was excellent. We've got some work to do about the nickname. Every car needs a nickname, but the fact that you had one that you could pull on that you knew was Pumpkin is awesome. The good news for you, Rebecca, is congratulations, because you're the first one to play. You're in first place.
Oh, sweet. Oh, so this is time you're going to put up people. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody's going to do this.
Let's Let's do it again. 5 more questions.
I don't have 5 ready.
Competitive.
Well, everything that we do in automotive is competitive, right? And so if we're talking about racing and timing, yeah, I mean, we're gonna put you on the leaderboard. So you're in first place. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Rebecca Fyfe, you have been a wonderful guest. You've been a great sport. I really appreciate you playing and offering all of that great information that we talked about today. We're coming up on the checkered flag here, but before we call it a day, is there anybody that you want to plug? Any shout outs? Anybody that you want to give credit to, in terms of your data analytics background and talking about who taught you the road or anything like that, old professors, anything like that?
Well, I'd love to give a shout out to our president, Mike Gilliland. He's basically taught me everything I know about the collision repair industry. Didn't grow up kind of dreaming of a career here, but I love it. And I'm very passionate about collision KPIs and helping our customers. So I really do hope if anyone's interested at all that they reach out and just have a conversation with us and maybe see if we can help.
That's great. Rebecca Fyfe, Client Development Manager at Autohouse Technologies. Big thank you to you today. You can go to autohousetechnologies.com to get more information on how to connect with them. You can always go to fromtheframeup.ca to check us out. We're on YouTube at From the Frame Up. We're also on SoundCloud at From the Frame Up. The Fast 5 segment leaderboard will be up on the website, so you'll see Rebecca's name in big, shining, blinking lights as well. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jared.